Thank you all so much for coming. I'm super glad to have you all here. My name is Suze Allen. For those of you who don't know, I am here the first Sunday of every month and doing Memoir Church. And Memoir Church started during the pandemic, but it has continued because it's just such a beautiful, divine space for shared stories. And I'm a firm believer in the power of shared stories. And I just wanted to, Muriel Rukeyser, poet, I just wanted to say this. If any of you are like me, for whatever way you're voting, I'm a little on edge about what's coming up. And so I loved this quote to start. In time of the crises of the spirit, we are aware of all our need for each other and our need for ourselves. She lived through 2 world wars and stood with the anarchists in the Spanish Civil War, and she used her own art as an instrument of cohesion and translation between selves. So this is the beauty of sharing our stories with each other. We lift each other up, and it carries the human spirit forward. So that's why I'm here the first Sunday of every month, and it is a delightful, delicious time. Some of you in the room have been here in Elizabeth's place as the featured guest, and it's such a joyous, beautiful place to be. So thank you all for coming. Elizabeth Orr wrote a beautiful book, Banjo, the Heart Milagro, a Zen story with crazy big miracles. And I happen to think Elizabeth is a crazy big miracle. I met her a little over 12 years ago. She found me. It was one of those crazy things where you go, how did you, da, 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 da. Dramatist Guild, maybe, I'm not sure. So I directed a play of hers called Badass Women. And it was really badass. It was wonderful. And Elizabeth is just a beautiful spirit in the world. She's a Soto Zen priest, lay priest, as she likes to say. And whenever I'm with Elizabeth, I always just feel calmer and life feels better. She just has this beautiful Zen about her. And I did have the joy and the pleasure of meeting Banjo toward the end of his life. And he did have an amazing, beautiful soul. So that was very exciting. So you've been a screenwriter, a playwright, an author, a journalist, a photographer. You've done so much. Why the memoir, Elizabeth?
Uh, it was something I had to do. It was instinctive. It was a very strong Dharma movement, spiritual movement. I knew that I had to do this, and it wasn't just for myself. It was meant to help people. And so the book is about love. It's about empathy. It's about the courage to change and also joy. And
Mm.
and so it has all those elements in it. I have to say, it was quite a journey writing this, because as a Zen student, a serious Zen student, I had to write something about myself, and then be present while writing about the past. It was very, I won't say difficult, but definitely it was challenging. So I just tried to stay present the entire time and keep going.
Yeah, well, you are not alone. I mean, any of us who write memoir, it's really beautiful if we can stay in the present of writing about our past. It's just this magic happens because we get to discover new things about something that already happened to us.
That's right.
And
That's
I
right.
love that calling. How did you find it different from journalism and playwriting and
Um,
how did it speak to you or manifest itself differently?
oh, very differently. the script writing, the screenwriting, playwriting are all very visual exercises, and that's very easy. The visual comes easy for me, having been a photographer too. But this had to do with prose, and like I said, this gauntlet of having to go to the past, stay in the present. It was difficult. I spent 3 years writing it during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
and um, I wrote 450 pages,
mm,
and I realized it was too much, that it was just what I call a memoir purge. You
yeah.
just let it all out. And
Hmm.
um, it wasn't what I wanted. It was more of uh, a journaling, and I wanted to tell a story at the same
Hmm.
time. So two things happened that were
Hmm.
really major changes in writing and the process. The first one was I sat side by side with Abbot Les Kay from Canando Zen Center. He's 95 years old,
Hmm.
and he's an incredible writer himself. We sat looking at the computer screen and writing some material, and the way he embodied writing was something I had never experienced before. It was life-changing. His energy, his whole self was into the copy. Very simple, very concise, direct. Um, and that entirely changed my whole attitude about writing and my process. And then a second thing happened. I got a MacBook Pro, an M3. I needed to get a new computer. And well, darn, it was a rocket ship. And I noticed that what I had missed in that original 3 year memoir stint was the music. I write so that it's music coming out of me.
Mm,
And between a lot of editing, AI included, I lost that touch of music. So with the MacBook Pro, I was able to record a chapter and hear what I was saying. And I got my voice back. I got everything back, the melody, vowels that sounded like echoes, consonants, whispers. I mean, all of these beautiful sound works that
mm,
that hadn't been there before. So that was the awakening, the major shift. And I owe Les
mm,
K for his beautiful spirit and feeling his transmission, just who he was, and being so close to that and going in uh, to write. Every writer should have a Les K and or a Zen Abbot sitting next to them as they're writing. It's very helpful.
mm. Well, I love what you said about the layering. I mean, I think that is the process in even in memoir. You think that we would be writing on these, huge dimensional spaces because we've lived it. But I love what you said. It's sort of like this journey, your 3 year memoir stint, where you get it out, you get out the story, and then you mine what's underneath it. And I love your idea of soul, music, as soul, that it connects into that and your heart, and so that you hear it as you felt it,
Yeah,
and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So
thank you.
lovely.
I'd like to add something for the writers here too. Carol Bly, Robert Bly's wife, is a writing teacher, and she has people spend 3 months doing this purging when she's writing a memoir. You get all your unconscious stuff out, whatever is there, the good, bad, and the ugly. You
Hmm.
just get it down, and then you begin writing. It took me 3 years to get through all that, but anyway,
Yeah.
it was necessary.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think all writing is good writing, even the purge or the vomiting on the page, because that's how we get to it,
Right.
however we need to get to it. And I think too, um, if I can quote Roland Tech, you write with your heart and then you go in second draft and third draft with your head, and you analyze. So if you're analyzing while you're writing, it's hard to be in the moment of writing what you need to write. So I
That's right.
think I think that's beautiful. Well, I'm glad that you had your masters and your people with you, but I also know that you shine very, very brightly as an artist and somebody who puts writing and beauty into the world. So,
You.
without further ado, I would love for you to give us some banjo.
All right. I'm ready.
Excellent.
Banjo, the Heart Milagro, a love story with crazy big miracles. I would like to ask something of everyone before I start, if you don't mind, Suze. Um, could we just take a few moments of silence before I begin, please?
Mm.
I would like to also ask everyone to please listen with the ears of your heart. Chapter 1, The Hobo. On this day of all days, I felt the presence of a beloved friend long gone from the earth. Milagros, the old Indian whispered. As I approached the railroad tracks driving toward my home, she added, Despacio, slow down. It was August and it was sweltering hot. I had missed my yoga class that morning, saving a stray dog, and wasn't in the mood for spectral nonsense. Perhaps I was overwhelmed and losing my mind like most natives in Silicon Valley. But still, I slowed down. Despacio, the voice repeated. I looked to my right, and in the distance on the tracks was a wobbly creature caked with mud, a stray dog, bone thin starving, taking his final steps of life. Oh my God, I breathed. The dog's spindly legs wobbled as he bent down to lick the last drops of water from a drying puddle. A tremor swept through my body, and my heart opened like a seed. I stopped the car, got out, grabbed my Guatemalan staff, yellow with a red snake down the middle, and hobbled toward him. The staff's glare caused him to step back. He was leery of humans, and by the looks of him, he had wandered the tracks for months, a lonely old hobo, filthy, limping, and desolately lost. I stopped a few feet away from him and laid the staff down on the ground. The snake seemed to uncoil and slither away. I wiped my eyes in disbelief, and the dog growled. I dropped to my knees. Easy, boy, easy. It's all right. My soothing temper seemed to hold him in time and space. He looked up into my eyes as if recognizing my voice and assessed my soul. Do I know you? I think I know you.
Mm.
He took a few tentative steps forward, but when I reached out my hand, he staggered back, still not trusting me. He had no collar or tags. Must have been dumped at the tracks, I thought. Pobrecito. Poor thing, the Indian sighed. I glanced around, but no one was there. I studied the dog closely. He was the ugliest dog I had ever seen. Like a broken tree branch, his tail took a sharp left turn at the end. Long, coarse hairs drooped down from his chin, reminding me of Mother Fede, a cranky nun I used to know. The black spots on his pink nose looked like a drunk Picasso had painted them. His old-souled eyes, however, revealed a glimmer of humor and streetwise wisdom. We gazed at each other, wondering what each would do next. I sat down on the dirt, wondering how to save him. He could walk no more, and my own legs were shaky. An accident months earlier had left me partially paralyzed. I couldn't carry him if I wanted to, yet I couldn't leave him behind. I gripped onto my staff with both hands and, with the faith of a Hopi medicine woman, got up and hobbled to my car. I opened the back door and the hobo's ears perked. Come, boy, I want to help you. He stumbled over and climbed into the back seat.
Mhm.
As I sat down behind the steering wheel, I glanced at the dog in my rearview mirror. My gut tightened. I felt the sensation of the past, present, and future blending together, a moment of inescapable destiny. If I had driven by a few seconds earlier or later, I would have missed him.
Mm.
When I got home, my partner Austin was asleep on the sofa. There's a dog in the car, I said. What? He popped up. Another one? Yes, another one. Uh, while I got some water, Austin went to get the muddy dog. As he carried him in, I yelled, No, stop! But it was too late. The dog scrambled out of his arms and up the stairs, tattooing our new beige carpet. Austin caught him and placed him in the bathtub where the dog stood mesmerized by the white walls, gleaming mirrors, glass shower door, and shiny fixtures. Where the heck am I? He seemed to ask, as if landing on Alderaan. He's a good dog, Austin said. He's so calm, I added, entering the bathroom. Austin and I stripped down and climbed in the tub with the dog between us. We glanced at each other naked and put our issues on hold, united in saving this dog.
Mhm.
I turned the shower on and suddenly mud ricocheted from the dog's shaggy coat into Austin's pale blue eyes and honey blonde hair. Ah, he yelled, turn off the shower. Mud was spitting at my eyes too, and I couldn't find the knob. Meanwhile, the dog's tongue lapped water until Austin closed the valve. We wiped our eyes, grabbed some soap, lathered, and rinsed the hobo, discovering he was black and white. The white looked snow white, and the black a deep charcoal. He's a border collie, I cried. That's why he survived.
Mhm.
Once dried, we led the hobo downstairs to feed him. I placed a heaping bowl of kibbles before him on the kitchen floor and sank to my knees to watch him. He devoured the kibbles, crunching loudly as bits shot from his lips. Are you going to name him? Austin asked. After a long pause, I answered, Dunno. Thinking back to the railroad tracks and imagining the wanderings of hungry hobos, I flashed on Woody Guthrie riding trains and strumming his banjo, singing, I ain't got no home. Banjo, that's it. That's what we'll call him. Great, said an exhausted Austin, lying on the couch, clicking on the TV. I looked down at Banjo, who had finished his bowl of kibble, and pet him. You were starving, boy. You must have come a long way. Suddenly, I felt an ancient presence. Banjo gazed up at me, stretched his front paws around my legs, and lowered his head. Oh, geez, I breathed. He's bowing. I called to Austin, Look, he's really bowing. Austin exclaimed, I don't believe it. Drawing closer, Austin's eyes brimmed with tears. It's a sign, I said. Could be. He's hurt, I noted. His right leg looks crooked. We took Banjo to Adobe Hospital, the only vet open on Sunday. There, the bearded old vet revealed Banjo was not microchipped and thought he was 4 years old from looking at his teeth. He's emaciated and dehydrated, but in remarkable condition. The vet showed us the x-rays. His right hip was probably crushed by a car, kicked by someone, or hit with a bat. See, he pointed. The hip bone is in an odd triangular formation. The vet shook his head. This dog has been through hell. I know, I sighed. Must have walked hundreds of miles, the vet paused, without treatment. Hearing this, my heart ached, and then I admired Banjo's will to survive. The old vet searched my tear-filled eyes, wondering if I would save him. He's lucky to have you, the vet said, as if hearing my mind. On the way home, Austin asked, Are you okay? You're very quiet. I turned away. We can't keep Banjo. Why not? I don't have the time. That's what everybody says, he countered. My eyes blazed at him. You know what the doctor said. I squeezed my hand on the door handle and blinked away thoughts of paralysis, hospitals, and a wheelchair. When we arrived home, Austin tried walking Banjo on a leash, but he tripped him to the ground. Immediately ashamed, Banjo licked his hand, pleading for us to keep him. He had never been leash trained, yet he was house trained. It didn't make sense. Later that evening, I washed my face, got into my nightie, and wondered where Banjo would sleep. Banjo climbed on my bed, lay down, and grinned. I laughed. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had chutzpah. I knelt on the floor, bringing us face to face as he studied me with his huge black eyes, alive and watchful. I pressed my forehead upon his head and sighed. Why did you have to come now? A voice murmured, Milagros. I knew the voice well. It was Tatita, the Ecuadorian Indian who had raised me. She had died decades ago, or so I thought. As I stroked Banjo's forehead, the silver milagro heart Tatita had given me brushed across his face. Banjo sensed my turmoil as my fingers clenched the bedspread, and I wept. Suddenly, a wave of radiant warmth embraced me. I looked up, and Banjo's eyes were filled with love, a love I had long forgotten, a love so pure and alive I shivered with goosebumps. He licked my tears as they streamed down. This dog, who had suffered so much, still loved with compassion and empathy. His heart was as big as the sky. Banjo's heart created an epiphany. To love completely, I had to be whole. I wasn't whole enough to be in a relationship, nor was Austin. We thought work and success led to peace and happiness, but it didn't. A wall of worry divided us now. I preferred the silence of Zen, while Austin sought refuge watching TV. I recalled the Dalai Lama once said, the most destructive intoxicant in modern times is distraction, not drugs or alcohol. A white furry paw tugged my arm. Banjo smiled, feeling a weight had lifted off me. He nudged me, wanting to be petted. As I stroked him, our heartbeats joined in a steady beat, filling me with courage.
Mm.
And
Stunning.
end of chapter one. We are moving now to chapter 20.
Ooh.
These are relatively short chapters. So I need to give you all a picture before I start. Um, the prior chapter, chapter 19, ends with Banjo and his two little friends, Buffy and Tuffy and me, meeting this strange dog at a water fountain. The dog was a beagle, and we all sense there's something very wrong with it. And when we look closer, we could see that his smile was permanent. And the owner was bragging to another person about how she had just gotten this dog cosmetic surgery so he would have a permanent smile.
Oh, God.
What?
Jeez.
Who can invent these things, right?
No, you can't make them up. No, no.
You make these things up, right? All right. So, chapter 20, Banjo and Blue. On the heels of the Snoopy event, I commiserated with Nancy and Jack, who were as normal as Nebraskans on a farm. $5,000 for a smile job? That's nuts, they wailed. Wait till I tell Bernie, I said. Who's Bernie? Jack asked. He's my new girlfriend. Banjo and I met Bernie at the Los Gatos Farmers Market, where he sold Hawaiian potato chips and regaled crowds with shtick. His frenetic mind shot jokes faster than legendary Robin Williams. I anointed him Bernie, the greatest unknown comic in America, the Gooka. In his youth, Bernie worked in comedy clubs, but didn't like hanging out with seedy people telling seedy jokes in seedy clubs in seedy cities on seedy nights. Besides, he was a morning person who awoke at 3 a.m. The job just didn't suit him. Bernie fell wildly in love with Banjo. He's smarter than most presidents, he shouted. Then, noticing my weight, channeled his inner Bubby. You look skinny. You eat like a Boyd. Bernie was especially talented at rating my feelings. What's the matter? Money, I sighed. I'm overworked with writing assignments. What about dog sitting? Banjo wouldn't like it. He would love it, Bernie insisted. My mind flashed to rescuing dogs from a nippy runaway Shih Tzu in the pouring rain to a golden lab across the street who had sadly peered at me from his balcony. I ended up walking him for free. Emptiness dancing, I cried. What the hell are you talking about? It's my true nature. I love dogs since I was a kid. Ah, huh, he mumbled. You're right, Bernie. Louder, he shouted. You're right, Bertie. Oh, my favorite words. In the following weeks, I handed out my new dog nanny business cards around town. My first dog customer, other than Buffy and Tuffy, was Blue, a blue-gray Chihuahua. His pretty owner had found him at the pound, the runt of the litter. Will you love him more than I do? She asked. That's what I do best, I said. After filling out an application, Blue was mine for the weekend. When Tiny Blue stepped in our home and saw Banjo, he leapt with joy, sashaying his little butt, weaving through Banjo's legs, and wagging his tiny tail like a glow stick. Blue melted Banjo's heart, and if hearts could talk, they both ached for their baby brothers. Blue followed Banjo around the house all morning until my therapeutic massage appointment. I forgot I had one. I took both dogs inside the violet darkened room with soft chanting and John the therapist giggling. They'll be quiet, I promised. Banjo fell asleep in the corner while Blue freaked out, barking to China. Joan, a chilled soul, nonchalantly swept Blue up and lay him across my hiney. There's a first time for everything, she smiled, working her hands around Blue, who later massaged too. When we got home and were utterly relaxed, the phone rang, and it was Fred and Suze from the Lavender Ranch in Pescadero. Hey, when you coming down? Drawled Fred. Oh, I thought it was next weekend. No, Suze laughed in the background. I got a problem, I said. I have Banjo and Blue, my new Chihuahua customer. Can I bring them both? Sure, said Fred. We can have Blue for lunch. Suze and Fred were lavender farmers, but had cowboy hearts. Fred had a huge handlebar mustache, which jittered around as he spoke, especially when he yelled expletives. And Suze, once a Silicon Valley debutante, surrendered to true love and her true nature as a cowgirl. Their two labs, Roy and Dale, added to their love of the Wild West. Later that afternoon, in the blistering heat, Banjo, Blue, and I arrived at the ranch, and the whiff of lavender blew in the car. Wow, this is great, Banjo barked. Blue yapped after him. The red octagon-shaped ranch was atop a lavender hill with a 360-degree view of meadows, horses grazing on land, and the deep blue pine mountains. If you breathe deeply, you could inhale a salty breeze from Pescadero Beach a couple miles away. When Sue saw our car crawling up her steep driveway, she stood on the porch clanging her triangular bell, notifying Fred down below in the barn we had arrived. Fred stepped out and waved his tan cowboy hat and marched up the driveway alongside Roy and Dale, who, upon seeing Banjo and Blue, raced up to welcome them. The dogs had a lickathon. Hey, Banjo, Fred said, stepping up to him, giving him pats on the back. Banjo stood up on his hind legs and wiped his tongue over Fred's handlebar mustache. Whoa, take it easy, Banjo. Blue, who looked like the size of a grasshopper, sprung at Fred too. Blue, is that you? Fred picked Blue up and wrapped him up in his arms. Blue enjoyed his mustache too, except for its swiping him into the air. Fred caught him and chuckled. Almost lost you there. Susan and I laughed. We gave each other a long hug, having been friends since our days at the Mercury News. She was much happier in God's green pastures than being the society column writer. Fred placed Blue down, who compulsively sniffed at his huge cowboy boots, smelling of straw, horses, and lavender. Banjo's eyes widened in every direction, more interested in the panoramic view. We all went inside into a western den filled with cowboy memorabilia on every wall and table. Next to a family photo on a sailing yacht was a snapshot of little Suze happily sitting on a pony in her cowgirl clothes, pistols, and wearing an oversized hat. An old Remington landscape of Monument Valley was over the fireplace. We all sank into the enormous brown leather sofas and chairs with copper studs at the edges. You look tired, said Suze. Yep, but I love being a dog nanny. Don't blame you, said Fred, leaning down to grab Blue. Fred, who was a large man, brought Blue up to his wide lap and stroked him. This had to have been one of the warmest, most comfortable places Blue had ever been, including my warm buns. Pressed against Fred's chest, he delighted in hearing his heart pounding like a drum. Banjo trotted over to Fred and Blue, then Suze, then me, happy to have love choices. The ranch felt like home, plus the room smelled like rich barbecue steak. Overwhelmed with happiness, Banjo sprang into the banjo dance, running from room to room with everyone laughing and Fred yelling, "Go, Banjo, get them hombres." Suze got up to get drinks. I mean, straight whiskey, the good kind from Scotland. I requested water for me and the dogs. After refreshing ourselves, Fred asked Roy and Dale to show Banjo and Blue around the ranch. "It's okay," said Fred. "It's corralled." "Nope, I need to keep my eye on Blue," I said. With drinks in hand, we moved to the patio overlooking the brilliant meadow with horses grazing. "Giddy up, dog," shouted Fred. Roy and Dale galloped down a narrow lavender trail with Banjo and Blue behind them. While they waited for Blue, Roy and Dale sniffed Banjo again and sensed his compassion and heroic life. They deemed him the pack leader. Little Blue, who finally caught up with them, wagged his tail with a full heart, just happy to be part of the pack. Banjo led them around the perimeter of the meadow near the edge of the mountains. A few deer rustled by, and the dogs froze. All Blue could see were deer heels. A baby deer, a beautiful speckled fawn with huge almond eyes, gazed at the dogs, especially Blue. He sniffed the air. "What a happy fellow," he seemed to say. "He's all lavender. He's all lavender." Blue barked back at the fawn and broke the spell. The fawn leapt back into the woods. Banjo then led his pack down the middle of the golden pasture. Roy and Dale formed a line behind him, and Blue was the caboose. Occasionally, Banjo looked back, making sure Blue was still with them. Blue was hidden in the tall, swaying grasses, but his tail whipped back and forth, causing ripples. For Blue, this was a grand adventure. The golden vines bent at his will as he strutted along with the big boys who made him feel tall. He was tall and stretched his frame to the clear blue sky, breathing in the fragrance of being loved and protected. After dinner, we all sat around a brick campfire pit on the patio with a tapestry of stars over us, crickets chirping in the woods, and Fred strumming his guitar, singing, "Take me back to my range and saddle, let me ride that range once more." That night, the pack cuddled under a pink teddy bear quilt. Banjo slept next to me. Blue nested on Banjo's soft fur, and Roy and Dale stretched out on the rug. 1 a.m., Banjo, Blue, and the two labs barked like hellions. Fred got up in his underwear and grabbed a shotgun. "You stay here," he commanded Susan and I. We giggled and went out in our pajamas anyway. Fred flicked the porch light, swung the front door open, and let the dogs out, except for Blue, who remained locked behind in his room. Suze got a flashlight, and our eyes searched for something dangerous, but it was pitch dark. The stark LED beam cast a wide light. Suddenly, down below, near some bottle brush bushes, the darks barked as if stung by a swarm of bees. They squealed, yelped, and howled. Fred fired into the air and a scared little skunk scurried past us.
Oh no.
We laughed until we realized the dogs had gotten skunked.
Mm.
Banjo was the first up the driveway, downcast and defeated. I guess he had never seen a skunk before. Roy and Dale lumbered up the driveway, knowing what awaited them. "Ooh-wee," Fred snarled. "I'm going inside. Night, ladies." He put his shotgun away and went to bed. Banjo whined, not knowing what to do. And I did what Sue's least expected. I hugged him. You're joined at the hip all right, she said. We put the dogs on leashes and led them to two shower heads on the wooden deck. The night was warm, so we both shrugged. Could have been worse, and got to work. We soaked and washed for 2 hours. Our pajamas were so wet they nearly melted off. We at last dried off, and Banjo and I entered the bedroom where we found Blue sitting on the quilt, anxiously waiting. He yapped and hurled himself towards Banjo. We're fine, Blue. Let's get some shut eye. We all snuggled in bed, Banjo next to me, Blue curled up next to Banjo, and we drifted off to sleep. Through an open window, the sweet scent of lavender wafted in as a chorus of chirping crickets serenaded the moon. The stars grew brighter and leaned down to listen. Tita's voice rose softly, singing, Cielito lindo, lovely sky. How singing gladdens the heavens and hearts. Ay, 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 canta y no llores, porque cantando se alegran, cielito lito, los corazones. That's it. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful.